Had nothing to do with you.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Pedophile Huntress. We're here with a common goal today, that you be encouraged in heart and united in love with us. Today, I have a very special guest with me. I've known her so, I don't know, 40 years or so. We went to school together. We grew up, unfortunately, with the same kind of father, and she is here to share her story today. We're just going to refer to her as Jill. She's in a location that we're not going to share just because, these are privileged stories and all of that. But Jill, just welcome. I'm so excited to
Thank
have you
you.
here with me
Well, I'm
today.
really excited to be here too.
Awesome. And I'm just so proud of you. I know it's hard to share our stories. I really am proud of you. It takes courage. And
Yeah.
I open it up in the way of we are here to unite people together. And I love that my own children say, Mom, I've never heard women your age talk so much about these stories. And it helps our girls too. So many of you listeners out in listener land, probably married abusers. I did. And then my children were hurt. And so if we don't tell our stories, people continue to bring these tragedies along, and then generationally, people are hurt. So we're here today with the goal of sharing our stories in a very safe way. We're safe now. People can't hurt us anymore. So what I want you to do, Jill, is just kind of bring us into the part of the story, the narrative that you feel comfortable bringing us in to. So just kind of, I don't know where you want to start, what age you're at, where you want to start now and go back, but just share a little bit with your story to bring the listener into who you are and why you're here sharing today.
Well, okay. So I'm the youngest of three girls. And let's see, I think it was back in 2018 or 19. My mom had arranged for the whole big family vacation. So that meant I'm just going to have to be around my sisters, who I just don't get along with. I don't think any of us really get along. And so within the first couple of hours of all of us being at this vacation house, my oldest sister pulls me aside and says, did dad abuse you when you were a kid? And I was shocked because to me, I'm like, no. I mean,
Wow.
I never do any, I mean, no, I have no memories of anything like that. And so I just like, well, why are you saying that? Apparently, my mom told my middle sister, who, instead of saying something to me, says something to my oldest sister, who then springs it on me when we're supposed to have a family vacation. I was like,
Oh, wow.
why do you want to start a family vacation with something like that? I was ready right then to pack up and just leave, and I did not want to be around these people.
Oh my
But
gosh.
my husband convinced me, well, I mean, we're like long ways from home, so I couldn't just go home.
Right, right. Well, they've got you in this
So
location.
I just kind of like, okay, I've got other things. My son and his wife and their daughter were there, so I've got other things to keep me occupied,
Oh
and
my
that's what I
gosh.
was doing, and I just kept myself occupied. Uh, we were there for a week, and we went home back to my mom's house, and my husband had to, yeah, he had to go back home because he had to travel to another place for his job. So I was, at my mom's and for a few more weeks. So I still had not said anything to her because I have no memory of anything like that happening. I don't. Honestly, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So I never said anything. During this time, she decides she wants to move into one of those senior living places.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, and uh, while I was there, I took a few days and took a little mini vacation to see my daughter, and came back, and She was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Let's go tomorrow and I'm going to sign the papers. I'm like, okay. And she did. She went in and she signed the papers and she was all ready to move and she wanted to move right then and there. And so instead of me leaving in 2 days, I ended up staying there 2 months longer
Oh, wow.
because,
In your the home that you grew up in.
yes, in my childhood home,
Okay.
because it ended up being all on me to move everything out of that house that my parents had lived in for over 40 years.
Oh my
So
gosh.
a 3 bedroom, 2 bath house, it all came on to me to get rid of everything.
Wow.
So no help from the sisters. One works. Well, the other one was like lived 4 hours away, but still there were weekends that nobody came
Wow.
out. But I got all that done. Got my mom all moved in to the point where I got the house cleaned out. Everything was done. It was put up for sale. So I went and I was staying with my mom at her place, her new apartment, for a week before I was coming back home. I remember then we got into an argument, and asked when I said something to her, why did you tell my older sister that this happened? And she was just had this whole shocked look on her face, like, oh, I never did that. I never did that. I just, left it. Well, unbeknownst to us, this was the start really of my mom and her dementia.
Wow.
So that's part of, I don't know if maybe it was part of her dementia that she came out and said that. Maybe it's part of her dementia that she doesn't remember saying that to me. I don't know. I still, have thought about it and thought about it, and I don't really have, you know, any memories of that happening. But, but there was other crap going on. There was a lot of other crap that was going on to the
And
point
so,
where,
okay,
oh,
yeah,
go
keep
ahead.
going. No, no, go
Oh,
ahead.
to the point where I have abandonment issues.
Hmm.
I have trust issues. I have a lot of trauma from the emotional abuse that happened when I was a kid. And that's something that our generation, we don't talk about that stuff.
Right.
I mean, we grew up where you didn't say these things, you didn't
Mhm.
talk about any of this. You didn't talk about feelings, emotions, or anything. There were people who, you're sitting by at school, maybe Joey here on the left side, got beat by his dad,
Mhm.
and Mary Sue on the other side who was sexually abused. And then little Betty in the middle, she's going home to a house where no one talks to her for 2 days.
Right. Right.
So you've got these three kids with all these abuse growing up together, not sharing what they've gone through because we just didn't do that back then.
Exactly. No, it's really true. So your mom comes to you. I think this story is fascinating. And one of the things I do want to explore with you today is there are so many of us that don't carry or know our full stories. And so
Mm-hmm.
as you say, this can be maybe your mother's dementia, or very possibly this was your mother trying to rid herself of this burden that she'd carried for years.
Yes.
So when your sister first comes to you, and I know you, and I know that your mind doesn't live freely, would that be a fair statement to say that you don't really let your mind free?
True. Yeah,
Uh,
that's
okay.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that this to me is one of the most fascinating things that people don't really talk about is what does that mean that I don't let my mind live free? Can you kind of define We did a prophetic heart healing session together, and
Hmm.
in those sessions, you start with a memory. And one of the things that you said to me was, I don't really allow my mind to be free around memories. So, can you articulate to me what does that feel like? I mean, we're both 60, we're in our 60s. And
We don't look it
while
though.
I know, no, we don't look it. That's right. We look doggone good for that. So anyway, and we're teasing you guys. But here's the thing that's important about that is what does that feel like when you say, I don't live with my memories free? I remember there was a time that you told me that your mind does these, you have these episodes, right? So talk to me about
So,
that, those episodes and what that feels like to not live with your mind open and free.
so I've spent, I think, a majority of my life blocking things out, and I've gotten, I think, pretty good at it. To the point where I was going through some stuff as an adult, and I was going to bed, and I was extremely stressed, and and everything, and just trying to sleep. And I literally heard like an explosion. It
Mm,
wasn't painful, nothing. It scared me to death. I sat up in bed quick. I was like, what happened? And realized it was only in my head. It took me a while. This would happen. Oh,
it's
it wouldn't
terrifying.
happen every day or every night, but it would usually only happen when I was trying to go to sleep, and usually if I'm on the verge of falling asleep. Well, I'm afraid to go to a doctor about it because they're going to say, well, you're probably schizophrenic. Nothing against that, but say that you probably have something, maybe a brain tumor or something. I don't know. Something was thought would be definitely wrong with me.
Right, right.
And that's through some research, come to find out it's called exploding head syndrome.
I
I
mean, I'd never heard that until you shared that with me. And what did they tell you it is?
So people who have been under some extreme stress, fatigue. So a lot of people would, the military people have this. People who
Mm,
are under some
okay.
extreme stress, it's just something that happens, and it happens when you are about to, that's falling asleep mode,
Mm,
and it's just so. So I carried that for a long time, thinking, great,
right. That's terrifying.
But once I knew what it was and why
Mhm.
it's happening, I understood. So I'm like, okay. So I can honestly say it really hasn't happened in years, at
Okay.
least in past 11, 12 years, maybe once in a blue moon or something. I mean, it still does happen, but not like it used to. Because it was
Right.
like, maybe a couple times a week or at least several times a month
Wow.
that it was
Wow.
happening. But, it's like, okay, in the severity of it, it's a lot less. And like I said, it doesn't hurt. There's no
Right.
pain. There's nothing.
Right.
It's just this audio or, something in your head that's so when it does happen, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm under some stress or I'm overly
Right.
tired. I know these things
And
about me. So I need to like
exactly.
take care of myself a little bit better so it's not happening.
I think it's fascinating that how our minds work in a way of, it's really keeping us safe because, like you said, it's when I'm moving
Mm-hmm.
into this sleep, all of a sudden my mind just lets go, probably because it takes, I read this book called The Power of Confession years ago. And one of the things that book, it was a very thick book and I loved it, but one of the things that it talked about was the congruence between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. And when we block things, it actually takes mind power, brain power to hold those things down. And there was this study that they went to these college kids and they said, "Tell me something you've never told me before." And immediately they could see that the two hemispheres in the brain began to connect and work together in a very functional way. So by suppressing, our mind actually uses part of our brain to suppress. It's quite fascinating. And as
Mm-hmm.
we get older, that becomes more difficult. So talk to me about why do you know that your mind is holding things? I mean, I think it's fascinating to me that you say, I know that I don't remember things. Why do you know that?
Well, mostly because I can't really tell you anything before my age of 5.
Okay, just
Uh,
gone.
it's yeah, I don't really have any memories of before my the age of 5. So I'm thinking, yeah, something could have probably, who knows? For
Right. And
some
so
reason,
that,
at that at young age, I've blocked it out, and so I'm not saying nothing happened. I'm just saying I just don't remember. I think
right.
something did, but I just don't remember. And I don't
See,
know if it might have been my dad or if it might have been one of his friends or someone.
mhm.
But something, I think something did. I
See, and
just
this
can't
is, I
remember.
think, what's fascinating, Jill, is that doing this advocacy work and living my own life, it's like this is the narrative I think that's fascinating here is that you know that you live with your mind in lockdown, but you don't know why necessarily that lockdown's there. Is that a fair thing to say? Because I've talked to you through the years, and I always think that's so interesting that she knows that she
Mm-hmm.
lives with a blockage, but it's just been such a normal part of your life. You just carry on with it. Is that true? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I want to bring
Yeah.
understanding. I know people listening to us will find themselves in your story because millions of people are living the way you live. And I did too. I did too. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I think there's a story here I don't know. So kind of talk about that. Why do you know that you're living with this place that you're not aware of?
Because when I was growing up, one, I had big boobs when I was 9 years old. I
Hmm.
was 9 and I was like, I mean, as an
Right.
adult, I ended up having a reduction done and they took off 6 pounds. You know,
Right. I remember.
that's a lot.
Right. That's a
But
lot.
here, being overly developed at a very young age, you get a lot of looking people, you get a lot of guys staring at you, men staring
Hmm.
at you.
Hmm.
So that's why I've always maybe suspected that maybe it's just a feeling, it's just a feeling that I really think that it probably did happen to me
Hmm.
because I think there was some truth to what my mom said. It might,
Hmm.
and at this point, I won't know because she doesn't even know who I am now. You
Right.
know,
Right.
it's and of course
It,
my oldest sister has passed away. So and me and my middle sister, we really don't talk. So and she's
right.
got the person to talk to about uncomfortable situations.
Right.
Oh,
Because
she's
probably the whole family, I mean, one of the things I know, Jill, is that families that come through this, your father was abusive on many, many levels. And we can certainly talk about that because I can remember being there and witnessing some of those things, not in person, but afterwards, and you would come and share things with me. But I think that these families, all of us kind of go into denial. And
Mhm.
so I think this one of the things that is not talked about enough when you come through severe childhood trauma is what they call trauma amnesia. Are you aware at all that trauma amnesia exists and it's very real and it's a way of coping?
Well, I think this is probably the first time I have actually heard the term, but oh, I
Mhm.
totally believe it. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
I do. I do because of, you know, watching you growing up
Hmm.
and then finding out later all the stuff that happened,
Hmm.
who would have guessed? You were
Well,
always so happy and cheerful and
isn't
everything.
that
And,
right?
and
Right?
it's like it's something that um we have to at times forget in order to function in life
Hmm.
and stuff.
Exactly.
So yeah, so I do believe in trauma amnesia because yeah, some of the stuff it's so traumatic. Our young brains at the time can't comprehend what's going on.
Exactly. It's
You
so
know,
true. Yes. And the other thing, I think it's interesting that you shared because you knew me, and a lot of people don't know me. They just see me as this strong advocate that helps. I lived in a fantasy world. And so when you walk, so all of these things happened at 3, I witnessed this murder, I do all these things. I just learned how to put everything away because there was no comfort. Nobody was there to talk to me. And I just began to live in a fantasy world. Like I remember this one blog that I called Fantasy Island. And I just kind of lived in La La Land. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who my parents really were. I just kind of showed up and became a good girl that pleased everybody so that maybe
hmm
possibly people would just leave me the hell alone. But
yeah, yeah,
they didn't leave me alone, but I wanted to disappear in people pleasing and just fantasy. Does that make any sense to you?
yeah, yeah. Because we became people pleasers growing up because we
Exactly.
we 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 didn't want the conflict, the scary stuff.
Ex
We didn't want the scary stuff, so
exactly.
we did everything we could to make sure that scary stuff didn't come find us again, or yeah, find us again
Exactly.
and again and again.
Oh, it's so
So
true.
my parents, they didn't drink. My dad was home every night, but there would be days when my mom wouldn't talk to me. I would have, I guess, upset her somehow, and I would just be ignored. And then my sisters were off wherever, so here I am, this kid, just spending a lot of time by myself because I pissed someone off.
By
You
doing
know,
nothing that you can remember.
yeah.
And so one of the things I think is fascinating is the mother role in these families. And so the only thing that you're seeing is now there could be possibly that your mother has this inclination that something's happening. She could have witnessed something by walking into a room or whatever, and then not having the courage or the wherewithal to protect you and herself. And then all of a sudden rejects you because she doesn't know how to step into this story. Does that make any kind of sense to you?
That makes perfect sense to me. And when we look back during those times when we were growing up, a lot of times now my mom did work outside the home, but she didn't make the kind of money that, to support 3 kids by herself or anything. And back
Mhm.
then, you stayed in your marriage.
You
You
did.
stayed there. No matter what was going on, you stayed there. And I think that maybe I was resented also maybe by my older sister because maybe my dad gave me extra attention than she did, than
Mhm.
she got.
Mhm.
Now there was 5 years between us, so maybe I don't know.
Well, and see, part of the story, Jill, is when because I know in my own situation, I know with my own children, many times a pedophile doesn't just single and target one child, but pedophiles often will have targeted ages. And then when that child ages out, they go to the other child. And often children will feel resentment because now they're not getting the attention that they were getting before when the other child gets it. And this is a horrific, horrific dynamic of these families.
Mm-hmm.
And it breaks my heart to even actually say it, but somebody's got to say these truths that a child just wants love and attention. And then when now you're not getting that attention and another child is, even if it's rape or molestation and these things, it's a very common theme. And unfortunately, families don't talk about these things. Like when your older
Mm-hmm.
sister came to you, if she had finished that story, she may have told you it happened to her as well. But what happens is we're so terrified to, like you said, that the bad's going to find me again. And
Mm-hmm.
that small, terrified, not just scared, but terrified place in us to return to that blocks these stories because it's terrifying. And to touch that wound again is terrifying. So I'm curious, Jill, is there something in your mind that when you say it's just a feeling that I have? Often I just because I've done this work for so long and my gosh, I've gone to counseling for 20 years in my own life and longer really if you add it up off and on because you have to step out and step in because it's just you got to live too, right? And have a dinner
Yeah.
party and enjoy and go on vacations. But I tell you, half of my life has been spent just trying to put the story together because I was so tired of not knowing who I was. And I was so tired of telling a story that I knew wasn't genuine. So these feelings that you have, it's hard for me to articulate because I don't want to lead you into anything you don't want to do. But is there a place of you that wants to know the story?
Yes. That's like a internal struggle with myself. Part of me is like, I want to know. And the other part's like, no, you don't. So it's
It's
it's a
interesting.
conflict,
Hmm.
and what I do is just I say, I got to put it in God's hands.
Hmm.
So here is something I'm going to share. I don't think I've ever shared with you. So my dad had been married before, and he had a son who I want to say, I think he was 10 years older than me.
Okay.
So he wasn't, I guess he was around for a certain point when I was growing up, and then he wasn't. As he got older, I guess his teenage years, he wasn't around. We knew of him, but we not met him. Oh, or had not seen him in a long, long, long time. So apparently, I'm about 14, you know, hormones and boobs, and we go to Montana to visit some family, and he shows up. We didn't know who this guy was. Well, it's my dad's son. So that was big. He stays for several days, and everything's great. He's taking me and my sister and some people, driving around in his big muscle truck, and all this, it's all cool. Well, he lived like maybe a couple hours away. So he left and went back to where he lived. And then we were going to do some traveling through the state and ended up at his house. And we were going to spend the night. So I know he was sleeping on the couch and I was sleeping on the floor. And I can't think where my other sister was. She must have been there on the floor too, but she must have been asleep. Anyway, so I was like, be hitting up at him or something. Yeah, he grabbed my hand and next thing he's got me touching him. So until he, it's hard for me to come out and really say all the words,
Right. And that's fine.
but he didn't really touch. me, but the fact that he made me do that with my
Hmm.
hand.
Hmm.
So I've always carried that around with
Right.
me.
And listening to you, I remember that you talked about him, and I just remember that he was a significant part of some story. I knew that. The thing that's interesting to me as I listen to you is it's always easier to tell the story that we can blame ourselves for. You know what I mean? Like, this is a story that now I'm bad because I think that we have this inherent feeling after coming through abuse that we're bad. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's easier for us to tell the story of us being bad than of our father being bad or of these places of origin. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know what I'm saying? It's just easier. And I assure you, Jill, there was, I mean, me and my brother, I mean, my brother was more forcefully with me, but I mean, I was raped by my brother. I mean, even at 15. And because, just all of those things. And when I told my mom, she just said, you know what, he went through the same abuse you did. Well, I didn't become an abuser. You know what I mean? So I just think, and then with cousins, there was cousins doing all kinds of sexual stuff because in families, who knows what they've been through? Because
Mm-hmm.
predators kind of hang out together and who knows what happened to him? You know what I mean? And so it's fascinating to me that it's always easier for us to tell what we feel bad for than to, step into these. And I think one of the reasons why I stepped into my story, I loved that you just shared, Jill. I've never had this conversation with somebody really about that internal dialogue about I want to know, I don't want to know. In my
Mm-hmm.
story, my mother was also a pedophile. And I tell you, I remember one night being drunk. I used to drink a lot of wine because I had so much pain. And I was sitting at the fireplace with my oldest daughter. And you know what came out of my mouth was, if I never tell the story that my mom's a pedophile, then it's not real. And I remember thinking, what the F did I just say? Where did that come from? And
Mm-hmm.
this was only 10 years ago or something, because she
Oh,
was the
okay.
last part of my story that I wanted to remember. It was so foul and disgusting to me that I did not want to remember it. And I was in active denial. And I just remember that night because I was trying to explain to my daughter how much pain I was in and how much confusion I was in about what was real and what wasn't real. And at that time, my oldest daughter was in active heroin addiction because she'd been raped by her father. And none of us were really talking about any of these stories. And and
No.
and yet she had just begun talking about it, and I was overwhelmed because what I was really saying is I have more of my story I haven't even told, but how do I even tell all of this part? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
one of the fearful parts of beginning to tell our stories is once you peel back that part of your mind, it starts unraveling. And so
Mm-hmm.
when we keep it shut down, I know, like when I hear you say it, I know it because I lived it for so long. I know what it feels like to live with your mind shut down. And the fear is that when you open the window to that, all of these memories are going to come flooding out. Does that speak anything to you when I say that?
Yes. Because the thought of all those memories coming out is terrifying
It's
because you
terrifying.
don't know, how am I going to handle this? What am I going to
Hmm.
do? It's like, okay, I don't want to know. It's better to not
Hmm.
know than to know sometimes. But still, like I said, I suspect. I suspect. Yeah,
Hmm.
it probably was
And
because of the way my upbringing was and everything. And
talk about that a little bit. So you've talked about, and here's, before you go into that, one of the things that I can share is when when we hold it in, it's almost, we can say it's like having a belly where you need to throw up. You know how you've eaten something and let's say you've had bad muscles. I can remember being so sick and I needed to get it out of me. What our memories do to us, it's like having a belly full of stuff that we need to throw up. I guarantee you that when we talk about it, we feel better internally. It's almost like throwing up spiritually or soulfully or whatever. And it keeps us
It's true.
sick. It really is. It keeps us sick. And I know I was with a very abusive men. I allowed all kinds of terrible treatment because I was just so sick inside, I didn't know. But talk to me a little
Hmm.
bit about. So I just want to share with the listener because people are always, I know people are going to find themselves in this, and this is such an important. It's one of the. I think most of the people I've interviewed have their stories, and this is to me such a place of the origin of how it all begins before we start talking about our stories. And so I'm so thankful to have this discussion today. But talk to me about all of these other symptoms of who your father was. Your father was not a well man. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
He had a short temper, and yeah, I got quite a bit of beatings growing up, you
Right.
know, and my mom never stepped in. She
Hmm.
never, you know, I do remember one time saying, well, you shouldn't have done that or something, or you deserved it kind of thing, you know.
Your mom said
So,
that to you?
yeah. So at that point, yeah. So I was in relationships, abusive relationships, physically abusive type,
Hmm.
being hit because I thought I deserved it,
Hmm.
you know. That's the
We're
way it's
always
supposed to
bad.
be for me.
Right. We're always bad, right? And that,
Yeah.
yeah, they set us up to believe that that's what we were created for.
Yeah. I mean, there was a time when I was in high school and I had said something about my sister's boyfriend. And she got all upset and goes running to mommy and daddy and stuff. And my dad and I get into an argument and he popped me in the mouth. And I had a split lip, a big fat lip split and everything, had to go to school. How do you
Right. And
explain
how old
that?
were you when that happened?
I don't know. I was like 15 or something. I was in high
Right.
school,
Right. Right.
I was always someone ran into a door.
Yeah. Right.
What do you say? You ran into a door. So yeah. But one time as an adult, my dad actually said to me, I know I hit you a lot when you were growing up and I shouldn't have. And I know that's why you're with someone who does hit you and you shouldn't be because you don't deserve that.
Right.
Along those lines, but
You know, I can actually talk about that. I think that our fathers were such grand manipulators with the entire family, and they also ruled with an iron fist. Everybody was terrified. But the
hmm.
other thing that they were good at was making us believe that they loved us. Did you think that your father loved you?
Well, I think he loved me just a little bit more than my mom did. I don't know.
So that's not a whole lot.
No, no.
Not a
I feel
whole
like,
lot.
I was definitely a mistake. My middle sister, we're only 15 months apart. So, that's pretty close. And, that's wasn't an ideal situation. I don't think my parents really had a great marriage, when I was growing up. I remember a lot of fights. I remember some fight going on and I'm sitting underneath the kitchen table, scared,
Right.
but
So he physically hurt your mother as well.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
But I think as I got older, I think that did stop because then I don't remember anything happening. But I do think, well, I know my mom suffered from depression, I think. And
Hmm.
sometimes she would get depressed and she'd go to work, come home, and you wouldn't see her for the rest of the evening. You just kind of be left on your own. My older sister was, left the house when I was only 13. So as a teenager, it's just it's kind of mean because my middle sister was always running off with one of her boyfriends or friends. So she was never home. So it was just me. And
Mhm.
a lot of time on my own, a lot of time with just why am I not good enough kind of thinking.
Mhm.
But
Right.
as an adult now, after all these years, I realize, I am good enough. I am good enough. And I feel better about myself now than I have probably in years.
Which is fascinating. And I mean, it's because it takes us a lifetime. Um, Coming through families like this, you and I both know, and I think that we can just share freely. You don't have a lot of self-worth. And then, we both got into very abusive relationships. It took me
Mm-hmm.
years. I mean, I think the marriage I have today is the best relationship I've ever been in. And that I was in my 50s before that happened and went to tons of counseling, because these families they set us up to. I mean, I feel the same way with you. I think I struggled believing that I did think my father loved me until I grew up and redefined what love was. You know what I mean? Because we don't really know. That's all we knew as a child. That's what love looked like to
Yeah.
us. That's what
Yeah.
love looked like to us. And then it takes almost a whole lifetime to say, well, that's not love. I know now that's not love. Even in movies, I could see a better representation of what love was. But it's very hard. We're at time, but I really see this, Jill, as being kind of a segmented series that I'd like to do with you because I know there are millions of people who don't sit with their stories but know they need to. And I'd
Yes.
like us maybe to wait. I like to keep these at an hour because it's hard for people listen with us and they have a lot of thinking to do on their own. But I'd
Mm-hmm.
like to bring you back in like a month and talk to you about the things that we talked about here today. But one of the things I want to talk about before we close is, did you feel betrayed by your mother while she was even looking at you being hit? So, not even getting the rest of your story. But what did that feel like to not have any help in that house against an abuser? How did that feel?
Well, unworthy. I was unworthy of
Mhm.
anything. I was unworthy of anything good in my life. That's how I felt,
Wow. Right.
you know, and that's
Right.
why I got into bad relationships and everything because someone was giving me attention that I knew also to get the good attention, you have to get the bad attention.
Right. Right.
So the
Right.
hitting and abuse and everything else was the bad, but he also gave me some good attention. So there you have it.
Right. I totally
Got
understand. It's such a mixed bag. And I
mm-hmm.
wonder, with your mom right before she lost her mind, I wonder if it was her way of a couple of things, getting that load off of her mind for not protecting a child that she was supposed to protect. And tandemly with that, was it a gift to you to explore? Because she's watched your life and she's seen, I'm sure, the aftermath of how that played out. It could have been her leveraging a last way to help you.
That could be that could be, and so that's why I totally don't dismiss. I,
Mhm.
because I know that people have had things happen to them that they don't remember. And
Right. It's very
and
true.
because I
Yeah.
don't have anything up until the age of 5-ish that
Mhm.
knowing me, something probably did happen. I shouldn't put it that way, but it's like if something bad's gonna happen, it's gonna happen to me kind of thing. But I shouldn't think that way.
Well, one of
But
the things, yeah, go ahead and finish.
oh, but that's that's how we sometimes we think. And
Hmm.
sometimes old habits are hard to break, you
Hmm.
know, but that's what, yeah, I'm pretty sure something did, but I'm not exactly sure what.
Well, one of the things that I can tell you is in what I do in life, there's a lot of people who would never say, I'm pretty sure something sexually happened between me and my father. And so the truth that you're willing to allow in your life is by saying that, because there are many people who would sit down and say, no, nothing, I'm sure nothing
Mm-hmm.
happened. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that you're honoring yourself by saying, I think there is something that's leaving the door open to the whole truth. And I think this is a beautiful place to land today because number one, I don't want to push you any more than you have. I just think it's such an important thing because there are so many people who don't have their stories. The work I do is to help people find their stories because Jill, you know my story, and my children
Mm-hmm.
were then sexually abused by a predator that I married and stayed with for 18 years. And because I didn't have my story, I couldn't put together the story of who he was and I couldn't see it. And so all of this perpetuates abuse in our life. And it's so important for us, for our children to know who we are and for us to receive love and comfort in those areas. When they're blocked off, even for the listener, the importance of finding our story is it's like vomiting out bad seafood that you've eaten. When we hold it in
Yeah.
us, it really is. It's like these sick places in us that need comfort, that need love. And yeah, I mean, I'm just telling you, we're so cut off. And unfortunately by that, those places also cannot be available to anybody else in our lives because they're not available to us. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I know my girls came back to me and really wanted more of me. I was stoic is a kind word, how I was, I was like they said, Mom, you were just a robot with Dad. And I was because that's how I was. Had to survive by being a robot.
Yeah.
There was no other way for me to survive my childhood. And then Troy was very abusive to us. And I was just a robot then. But if you knew me, I probably looked happy. I mean, it was so weird, but I wasn't happy. I was horrifyingly depressed. And then when I left him, the funny thing was, Jill, I didn't start drinking a lot until I stepped into my story. And then I was overwhelmed with pain and I started drinking because it was funny. I became more of a mess outwardly when I stepped into my story than I had been, but I was happier than I'd ever been because I was
That
being
makes
who
sense.
I was. And so
Mm-hmm.
even if I drank too much or even if I went home with a man, at least it was my story and somebody wasn't controlling my life and telling me how to live and how to behave. Because I had before 35, I was living somebody else's story and I was being a good girl for everybody else. I always say to become who I am today, I had to start being what I considered a bad girl to become the best version of myself. Isn't that silly? But that really was
It's
kind of what it
true.
felt. I
It's
know it seems
true.
weird, doesn't it? But you understand. Tell me how come you understand that? You started laughing and you understand what I'm saying. It's so
Well,
dumb, but I had to
it's
become
like, yeah, it's weird because it's like, well, everyone thinks I'm going to be bad, so I am going to be bad,
yeah. And then at
you
least we
know.
start being our authentic selves, which I
But we were
assure
in
you is
control. We
yes.
were in control of the story, in the situation, and everything.
And that feels wonderful. It really feels
Hmm.
wonderful. When I got divorced at 35, that was the first time I stepped into who Jody was. Before that, I was only a daughter, a wife, and then a mother. But who was Jody? I can remember looking in a mirror at 35 saying, "Who are you?" I did not know who I was. And then I started going out, I started partying. I kind of relived my teen years because I got married very early. I got with Troy when I was 17 years old. And I just went from one very controlling, abusive relationship right into his prison. And I'd never been free. And so I would love to leave the listener with step into your story, even if it's messy, and find your authentic self because it
Mm-hmm.
brought me, if I had never done that, Jill, I would still, if I stayed with Troy in that marriage, I would have lost my children. I would have lost myself more. I didn't even have myself, but I certainly would have lost my children. So we are in a better place where we
Mm-hmm.
are because we stepped into who we are. And the other thing that's true now is telling our stories isn't trying to hurt our parents. It's trying to find who we are, right?
Yeah,
It does,
exactly.
we're not pissed off at anybody. We just need to know who
No,
we are.
we need to share. We need to get it out. It's like we need to
Exactly.
unpack the luggage in your mind.
We do. It is. It's like getting
Mm-hmm.
out that bad seafood because
Mm-hmm.
that is the beautiful thing now is I have so much space in my mind. I have to use it for other things like this because I wasn't used to having so much freedom in my mind because I lived in lockdown. I mean, it's really funny, Jill, when I read that book that it actually takes mind power. Our brain has to use a piece of itself to hold things down. And then I had a counselor tell me, that counselor that I love so much, and he changed my life, but he said, as you get older, it's harder to keep those things hidden. And it really is true. And so I think that it's the best journey to journey
Mm-hmm.
forward with finding who we are because we deserve it. We deserve to know where we went through. We deserve to turn back and love that child that had to go into that lockdown mode. We
Yep.
deserve it.
Yes, we
So
do.
we really do. And so I thank you for being here. I would really
Thank you.
love to have you back. I'd like to wait like a
I'd
month,
love
6 weeks,
to.
and let's just explore again because I've not, people come on and tell their stories, but I think the exploration of why we don't is such an important thing to talk about because it's what we've lived. We lived years of our lives in this complete lockdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I
We
just like
do.
to always, I always like to just give my guests the last few minutes to say anything that you feel maybe you'd like to leave with the listener because people listen to us. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of views. And so what would you like to leave just with what we've talked about today? How would you close today?
Well, I know there's probably a lot of people out there like me who I know something happened to me. I know something happened to me and I really can't remember the details or anything. You know what? That's okay
Mhm.
because there are people out here just like you. There's someone just like you who's gone through the same exact thing out there. You're not alone. And that's the number one thing is you're not alone in any of this.
It's
You're
beautiful.
here for you and want to hear your story.
We do
Because
want to hear
telling
their
your
story.
story will free you.
Mhm.
So
That's
yeah.
beautiful. So I
Yes.
want to just in a nutshell ask you, I just got certified in prophetic heart healing, which I did this as a way, I believe that only God can heal and touch some of our anxiety, our pain, that kind of thing. In a nutshell, tell me how you did some sessions with me. Tell me
Mm-hmm.
how it was different than you thought it was going to be.
Oh, well, what do I say? Um, it's kind of hard for me to describe
Yeah, no, it's fine. Take your
the
time.
process, but when I was doing it, I actually felt that God was there with me.
Mhm.
So that He's telling me, you know, give me your problems because I think there's a tug of war. Like, oh, I think to myself, he's got so many other people he's dealing with. Why should I give him my problems?
Mm.
And he's telling me, no, I'm yours. We're one on one. You got to give me your
Yes.
problems. You got to tell me what's on your mind. And I always thought, oh, I can't pray like some people. And it's like, I just say, God, here it is. You know what's going on. Here's putting it on your plate. So I have a more of I feel a one on one relationship now.
It's beautiful.
that I
It
could
is so
actually
beautiful.
here's my problems.
Right. And let him help you carry it, right? It's fascinating, isn't it? How bringing God into a memory with you changes everything, or into a problem with you. It does change everything. It's beautiful.
I have a quick little story.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
uh, my daughter's going through some stuff, and I've had to kind of take a step back and say, okay, you're on your own. I can't do this anymore. I gotta let her hit rock bottom, kind of thing. And so it's been a struggle, and I've been doing a lot of praying, a lot of praying. Well, a few days ago, I took my ring in to get it resized. And so they were taking some pictures of it. And she goes, I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but the earth will leave a mark on a diamond. And she goes, and yours has a cross.
Oh my
I
gosh.
am like, you're kidding me. She goes, no,
That
she
is
goes, see
so,
the picture. Yours has a cross. She goes, I've never seen anything like that.
I
I'm
have
like, you know what?
goosebumps.
I have been sitting there at home saying, you know what, God, sometimes you need to slap me in the face to let me know, you know,
Wow.
sometimes, and I right there, that was my sign. Sometimes you
He,
gotta give me a sign because you gotta slap me in the face. I don't know what you're saying. Gotta slap me in the face,
wow.
and that was it. So yeah.
Wow. You know what,
Uh,
Jill? He's always trying to find us. He is.
mm-hmm.
And that stone made it to you. He's always trying to find us. It's so
Yeah.
beautiful. Wow, that's incredible.
So
Well,
well,
sister, I love you. I have been
I
with you
love
for
you.
years. You are closer to me than a sister. I just pray
Oh,
right now, protection over you, healing over you, just for sharing your story. I love you so much. We are going to be in
love you
touch,
too.
and we are going to do this again, but we're going to give you
Okay,
some
yes.
weeks, and then we're going to come back because I just think this is I had never approached it from this way, and I think it's just such a beautiful approach. It's different than just coming and saying, here's the story I found. We're actually
Mm-hmm.
talking about how do you find your story. So, you know what, listeners out there, thank you so much. Give me a follow. It's how it works out here. If you like what we're doing, do follow our work, comment. Also, send me an email at bitsandb1218 at gmail.com. I'm here to hear your stories, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.